to create bookmarks, one of the things that you want to do is first figure out the dimensions of what your bookmark ought to be. Here, these are a series of 2-inch by 6-inch bookmarks. Pretty standard sizing. I did that because it's easier to fit onto a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. That's another thing you want to consider whenever you're doing this. You want to make sure that your paper size is set properly. And you want to also make sure that your bookmarks are all going to fit in a big row like this, and you'll see why when we're printing out the back of these. So make sure your printer margins are 1 inch on the top and bottom, and left and right you want to make sure they're at 1/4 inch. So your 8.5 by 11, you're cutting off 1/2 inch on the side, so that leaves 8 inches in the middle. Perfect fit for your 2-inch bookmarks. Then on the next page, you'll see you have the back of those same bookmarks set to be at the exact same location on the page, just on the opposite side. And that's very important too, because literally you're just going to be able to flip the page and print it so that it'll just line up perfectly. If you have varying margins on either side of your image, it's going to cause problems when you try to flip that page and print it. So whatever you put here in the middle, you want to have an equal distance on either side of your bookmark. Now we look at printing. So whenever you print these, you want to make sure it's going to be high quality for one. Now we have a continuous ink printer, our Epson 97B 1D2. It's the ET2650 series. It's wonderful. My sister does, her own printing of her art prints at home to sell on her Etsy store, so that's why we have one here at the house. But I've also found they come in very useful for bookmark creating. So one of the things you want to look at here is on whatever color printer you're using is the printer properties. Now for these you want to make sure you can choose. I've been kind of playing around between the matte print and the glossy paper print. Very different looks, especially for dark prints like these are. Quality should be set to high quality. And don't worry about the two-sided printing and stuff like that here. We'll take care of that within Word. So over here, you'll see that I've got it set to manually print on both sides. So it'll prompt me whenever it's ready to print on both sides. So let's go ahead and try to do a print and see what happens. Okay, so I actually forgot to put in paper here. So it's complaining at me, so I'm going to go ahead and start it. And you'll see that for our model of printer, it has a hard time. I'm using heavy cardstock paper for this, so it gets kind of confusing. This poor printer gets a little confused sometimes handling cardstock paper. This time it's taking it just fine, I'm so glad. But you'll notice, since this is a high quality print, it's taking a long time, printing each line very slowly. And this printer, what's nice about it, we have this here to catch any ink drips, is this little area here. This is why this is a continuous ink system. So whenever you run out of ink, you just buy in the replacement and pour it into the little cubby holes down there. Very convenient for printing your own things at home. So yeah, we'll wait and see what this looks like once it prints out. So while we're waiting for this to print out, I wanted to point out the kind of cardstock that I'm printing this out on. This is perhaps the best that I've found as far as like the different weights of cardstock. You could probably find other heavyweight cardstock, but this week we got this at Hobby Lobby at a pretty good price. But again, it's heavyweight cardstock is what you're looking for. This one in particular doesn't show the weight for it, but if you look for heavyweight cardstock, that's probably going to be your best bet for bookmarks. From what I've read, it's also very good for paperback covers and things of that nature, so that really tells you the durability of this paper. Alright, so it finished printing the first side of the page, and you'll notice it's a little warped just because there's a lot of ink on there, and that's okay. That's okay. We're going to look at putting this back in now.
Again, I'm manually flipping the sides on this. You can imagine printing multiple copies of this and then flipping the whole group aside. Though your printer may have trouble with that considering it's cardstock. So now, with this upside down, I'm putting this back in. Alrighty, now I'll go back to my PC and tell it to continue. Okay, so now you've got it printed on the front and back. It's great, but now you've got to cut it out. Fortunately, they sell these now. Usually I would have used to use one of those big metal cutters that they used to have in like mailrooms and stuff. My mom was a teacher, so I got used to having those around all the time. But now they sell these, which are really nice. They have a lovely wire that goes up the middle to help line up where your line needs to be. And then your cutter is this little piece right here. They sell them at Michael's. I think that's where we got this one. This was like $20, $30, something like that, if I remember correctly. But it's becoming very handy, especially for these bookmarks. So let me go ahead and cut this out so you can see what this looks like. You notice I'm using the darker side to kind of cut these edges off because it's easier to see where to line it up at. And ironically, I've gone to places before and asked them to cut out pieces like this, and it costs like 30 bucks. I'm not going to name locations, but I was like, I could have done that myself before I got one of these. That's what made me want to get one. Look at that. Now you have your lovely bookmark. And you notice it's very, very durable. By comparison, you can see some of the other bookmarks that I've tried to make. This was the first attempt. See how flimsy that is. It's also much smaller, so not terrible. This was our next attempt. So a little bit sturdier than the other one, but still just really, really not heavy cardstock. This is cardstock, but not heavy cardstock. And then finally, you have the piece we just made. So, not nearly as flexible as these other pieces, and a lot more long-lasting. And for me, I always like to have something to kind of show the fans that, you know, this is handmade, this is from the author. So I got a little stamp, very appropriate for a book about, you know, werewolves. And I like to stamp the back of my bookmarks, just to show that little extra bit of interest. And so that not every bookmark that they get is going to be the same. So finally, you have the finished product. You'll notice I put on here the name of the novella, my name and my website, as well as my publisher's information. So it's very important to have multiple links on here to advertise your work. So hopefully someone will be like, this is a really cool bookmark. Let me go look and see what else I can find by them. And there you go. I hope this helps with all of your bookmarking plans, and good luck with whatever you're trying to sell with them as far as books or novellas or anthologies or what have you.